April 1945. Frankfurt, Germany. The war was almost over. American forces were processing thousands of German prisoners every day. Routine, systematic, efficient. Soldiers came through the line, weapons surrendered, names recorded, papers signed. Patton was inspecting, walking the lines, watching his men work. Then he stopped. A German soldier, SS uniform, standing in line like the others. But something was wrong. Around his neck, metal catching the light. Not one dog tag, not two, dozens. Patton walked closer. The German was wearing a necklace, made entirely of American dog tags, strung together on a chain. Patton stood in front of him, looked at the tags, started reading the names. Private First Class James Murphy, Sergeant Thomas Reid, Corporal David Chen, Private Robert Williams. 50 dog tags, 50 names, 50 American soldiers, 50 families. This German had collected them, like trophies, like hunting kills, worn them proudly around his neck. Patton looked up at his face. No shame, no regret, just cold indifference. And Patton said something that nobody in that processing line would ever forget. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the World War II stories, where evil finally met justice. To understand what those dog tags meant, you need to understand what they were. Every American soldier carried two stamped metal tags worn around the neck. Name, serial number, blood type, religion. And if you were killed in combat, one tag stayed with your body, so it could be identified. The other went to the records office, so your family could be notified. They were not trophies. They were not souvenirs. They were the last proof that a human being had existed, had fought, had died, had a name. 50 dog tags meant 50 dead Americans. But not all of them died in combat. That was what made this different. As Patton stood there, reading name after name, his intelligence officers began a rapid assessment, cross-referencing the serial numbers against casualty records. What they found changed everything. Of the 50 soldiers named on those tags, 12 had died in confirmed combat. The other 38 were listed as missing in action, not confirmed dead in battle. Missing, which meant something else entirely. They had been captured. They had surrendered. They had been prisoners of war, and they were dead anyway. The investigation that followed would take 3 days. What it revealed was methodical, deliberate, and absolutely unforgivable. The German soldier's name was SS Unterscharführer Heinrich Braun, 24 years old. He had served on the Western Front. Since the Normandy landings, he had not collected these tags on battlefields. He had collected them in prisoner-of-war camps, in surrender situations, in moments when American soldiers had their hands raised and their weapons down. He had killed prisoners, unarmed men, men who had surrendered according to the rules of war, and then he had taken their dog tags as souvenirs, as proof of his kills, as trophies he wore around his neck. With apparent pride, Patton read the preliminary report, standing in the field. He read it once. Then he looked back at Braun. By the time the full picture emerged, Patton had returned to his command post. His intelligence officers spread the evidence across the table. Photographs of the dog tags, cross-referenced casualty records, witness statements from survivors. Of the same prisoner groups, 3 American soldiers had survived the incidents involving Braun. They were tracked down, brought in for questioning. Their accounts were consistent. Private First Class James Murphy, from Ohio, captured near Bastogne, January 1945. He had surrendered with 6 others. 3 were shot immediately. Murphy ran, survived. His dog tag was among those, hanging around Braun's neck. Sergeant Thomas Reid from Texas, captured near the Rhine. February 1945. He had been marched with a group of 30 American prisoners. At a crossroads, Braun had separated 12 of them. Those 12 were never seen again. Their dog tags were among the 50. The pattern was clear. Braun had systematically murdered prisoners of war over a period of several months. He had kept their dog tags as a personal record of his kills. When Patton's officers confronted Braun with the evidence, his response was extraordinary. He didn't deny it. He looked at the evidence, looked at the investigators, and said simply, "They were the enemy. I did what soldiers do." The investigators brought Braun to Patton's command post. Patton was standing at his desk when they brought him in. He didn't look up immediately, just stood there looking at the evidence spread across his desk, the photographs, the records, the names. Then he looked at Braun. Braun stood at something, approximating attention. No fear, no remorse, just the flat indifference of a man who saw nothing wrong with what he had done. Patton walked around the desk, stopped in front of him. He reached out and took the chain of dog tags from around Braun's neck, held them up, let them hang from his fist. 50 pieces of metal swinging slowly in the air. He looked at Braun. Braun looked back. Patton began to speak, quietly, slowly, every word deliberate. "These are not trophies." Braun said nothing. "These are not proof of your strength. These are not evidence of your skill." He held the tags closer to Braun's face. "These are 50 human beings. 50 men who had names, who had families, who had mothers waiting for them to come home." Braun's expression didn't change. "You murdered them, not in battle, not in combat, after they surrendered, after they were unarmed, after they had done everything the rules of war required. And then you wore their names around your neck, like you were proud of it." Braun finally spoke. "They were the enemy." Patton stared at him. The room was absolutely silent. Then Patton said something, so quiet that the men, standing 6 feet away, later said they had to strain to hear it. "No, they were soldiers, just like you claimed to be. The difference is, they followed the rules of war. They surrendered when they should have. They did what honorable soldiers do, and you murdered them for it. That doesn't make you a soldier. That makes you a murderer, wearing a uniform." Braun opened his mouth. Patton held up the dog tags. "These men have names: Murphy, Reid, Chen, Williams, Martinez, Johnson, Kowalski, O'Brien. I am going to learn every single one, and I am going to make sure that every family gets told exactly what happened to their son, their husband, their brother, their father, not missing in action, not lost in battle, murdered by you, after surrendering, while unarmed. They deserve to know the truth, and those families deserve justice." He turned to his officers. "Get me Judge Advocate General. I want charges filed today. Every count we can make stick. Murder, war crimes, every violation of the Geneva Convention this man has committed. I want this tried properly. I want it on record. I want the world to know what was done to these men." He looked back at Braun one final time. "You thought wearing their names made you powerful. It just made sure. We knew exactly what you did." He handed the chain of dog tags to his aide. "Get these to the records office. I want each tag matched to a name, each name matched to a family, each family notified personally." Then he turned away from Braun. He was done looking at him. "Get him out of my sight." The investigation and trial moved quickly by military standards. The 3 American survivors testified directly. Additional witnesses were found. German soldiers from Braun's own unit who had seen what he had done and said nothing. They testified now. The evidence was overwhelming. Braun was charged with 12 confirmed murders in combat, and 38 murders of prisoners of war. The military tribunal deliberated for 2 hours. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts. The sentence was death. Heinrich Braun was executed by firing squad in April 1947, 2 years to the month after Patton had stood in that processing line and seen a chain of dog tags catching the light. The dog tags were returned, all 50 of them. Patton's staff spent 3 weeks tracking down every family, writing letters, making calls, visiting homes where possible. The message was always the same: your son is not missing. We know what happened. We know who did it. He has been brought to justice. One mother, Mary Murphy from Ohio, received her son James's dog tag in the mail 2 months later. She wrote back to the Army, "I always knew Jimmy didn't just disappear. He wasn't the kind of boy who just disappeared. Thank you for finding out the truth. Thank you for making it matter." Patton never spoke publicly about the incident. In his diary, he wrote 4 sentences. Found a German soldier today, wearing 50 American dog tags. 50 men he had murdered. Filed charges immediately. Some things cannot be allowed to stand. That was it. No rhetoric, no speeches. Just 4 sentences. And the certainty that justice had to happen. The story of the dog tags spread through Third Army within days. Not as an official communication, just soldier to soldier, the way important things travel. And what the soldiers took from it wasn't complicated. Patton would find out. Patton would make it matter. Patton would get justice for the men who couldn't get it themselves. That was the promise he made to his soldiers, without ever saying it directly. Alive or dead, they were his men, and he would fight for them, every one of them, even the ones wearing a chain around a murderer's neck. The names on those 50 dog tags are now recorded in the National Archives, each one documented, each death officially attributed to the correct cause, not missing, not unknown, not lost in the fog of war, murdered by Heinrich Braun, brought to justice by George Patton. Because some things cannot be allowed to stand, and some men make sure they don't. If you found out what Patton found that day, what would you have done? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more World War II stories, where evil finally met justice, make sure to subscribe. You're in Patton's army now.